his teeth and was out of it for the next 4 days. So I said, Heather, will you go and do a speech on leadership? I went, okay. Normally I like to be prepared, but okay, that's fine. I've done speech on leadership, that's fine. But this was very, very different. Very, very different. Some of the delegates at this leadership conference had walked 200 miles to get there. So it was a little bit of a different, it was also slightly different because I was being translated as well by a very nice chap called Barnabas, who not only translated the words, but mimicked me as well, which is a bit off-putting, to be fair, a little bit off-putting, because he would mimic my tone of voice. And then all of a sudden, it's a bit like when you watch yourself on video, you suddenly go, do I really do that? Or is that just because he's a big bloke and maybe I'm really that butch? Please, again, don't give it away. There's someone at the back going, yeah, actually, Heather, you are a little bit butch, let's be fair. Okay, fair enough, I've got muscles from cycling, that's what it's about. But there I was in Uganda, and we were talking about values, and I said, what values do leaders need to do? And I asked them to get into groups to discuss it, which was the second of my big issues, because they weren't used to getting into groups. They're still kind of in kind of 60s Britain type teaching, chalk and talk, rather than let's get into groups and discuss. My first issue was when I brought a flip chart thing and there wasn't anything, so I had a human flip chart holder, little face. It actually looked like that. It was the guy with the nose over the wall. Yeah, well, it looked like him, like that. Somebody holding it. And when I wrote on it, I had to say, "Can you tense your stomach a bit?" Has anybody here ever had to write in a flip chart that was backed up by somebody's stomach? Very odd. So I asked them to get into groups. I said, "What kind of values do you think a leader should have?" And we had all these values, but the one that kept coming up was honesty, honesty, honesty. And as I was in a church, maybe I was being assumptive, but I wanted to say to them, can there be some things, because I was actually really talking about the traits of a leader rather than the values at that point. I said, can we assume honesty? And actually as it went on, I realised there are certain things we can't always assume. Do you know what I mean? In the culture of an organisation, we can't always assume it, but we like to think we can, and we still have to press it home. And a little while after that, I was chatting to somebody who worked in a prison. And this is a moment that may shock you. Anybody who works in prisons here? Okay. I won't say which prison. It doesn't really matter. But I was about to go to the cinema, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to the cinema tonight." And they said, "Really? What are you going to see?" And I said, "I'm going to see," and I can't remember what the film was, but I was proud of this because it was a premiere. Now, admittedly, it wasn't Leicester Square with paparazzi. It was Preston Odeon, no paparazzi. But I wasn't exactly going to get dolled up. But it was a premiere. It hadn't been shown in Britain before. And that person said to me, "Oh, guess what the prisoners are doing tonight?" And do you know, that hadn't occurred to me to even think about guessing what the prisoners would be doing that night. Maybe that's just me being a little bit full of my own self-importance. I hadn't thought about it. I said, well, what are the prisoners doing tonight? He said, they're watching that film. And in my naivety, I said, the government are splashing out a little bit, aren't they? They're getting little premieres going in the prison. And they said, no. Wasn't that one of the prison warders has downloaded it as a pirate video for them to watch. Now you see, some of you've forgotten to do the stone face. Some of you are looking shocked now. You're looking shocked. Why? I'm going to ask the question. Go on, help me out with this. Why was I shocked? Why are you shocked? Some of you aren't, and you're going, yeah, well, that's just about it. You're cynical ones. But some of us are shocked, some naive ones like me. What?
You'd expect it to be honest.
You'd expect it to be honest. You expect their personal values to reflect the job they do. In the prison, in a church, in the police, that's what you expect. You don't expect them to be doing that. Now, of course, the difference is it depends on how you view a job. You see, I think we probably think that prison warders are there to help to rehabilitate prisoners. If the job description is to keep them quiet and off the street, it's a different thing, isn't it? Have we defined it enough? Have we defined what the values mean in the role? Does that make sense? It's about it being personal. I was shocked a little while ago when I heard about a firefighter putting a firework through somebody's door and then jamming it in with a wheelie bin. Now, I'm shocked when I hear of children doing it, but I was more shocked because it was a firefighter. And by the way, they ended up not only getting sacked, but going to prison for it. So, maybe there is some justice, but the whole point of this is, it must be personal. Our values, our culture, Our raison d'etre, our reason for doing what we do must be personal. So when we do our culture work in an organisation, when we talk about dealing with the terrorists, we have to get really under the skin, which is pretty tough, isn't it? We have to be able to talk about it, we have to define it, we have to define our values and behaviours. Well, you probably know this and you probably spent a lot of work on that. But we have to be able to relate that to their personal lives as well, don't we? We have to be able to relate it all of the time, you know. Because the terrorist is converting the spectators and the corpses first. Because the players haven't got time to listen. And if we don't do anything, the players will either go there or go out. So what do we do about the terrorists then? What do we do? Give me some examples of how we can help a terrorist convert.
Guantanamo Bay?
Apparently it was a good plan. It's not worked as well as it ought to have done. If you only have, you could have a little office that you call Guantanamo Bay, couldn't you? You'd say, we're just moving your desk into there. What can we do? What can we do?
Have the conversations.
Have the conversations. When you say the conversations, do you mean one conversation with multiple people or multiple conversations?
Multiple conversations with the terrorists.
And what will we say in our conversations?
Tell them what you're observing, the reasons why you feel that, what the impact of their behaviour is having on other people as well as themselves, and how can you help them to become more a part of the team.
In case you can't hear, Joanne's very quiet. She's quite shy, a little bit like me. And she's saying, you're going to have the conversations. You've got to be honest. How many times do we tiptoe around? Because someone like me may very well have stood on stage and said, align people behind a vision, be positive with people. And I absolutely agree with that. But often when I speak, I talk about putting money into the emotional bank account. Yes, you put stuff into the emotional bank account, you do lots and lots and lots of praise and you do everything you can. And why do you put money into a bank account? At some point you're going to have to make a withdrawal. And Joanne's talking about the conversation that makes the withdrawal that says, oi, you're out of order. You are out of order. These are the behaviours. This is what it's doing to the team. We can't afford that. Let's take you through a model that I heard recently. And it's not that I've put you in that box, but where do you put yourself? Because here's a question for you. And I wonder if you're going to be brave enough to actually raise a hand at this one. It's entirely up to you. For all of us in this room, and we all obviously consider ourselves to be players, how many of you, how many of us have been in another box at some point? Yeah. I am a very good terrorist. Because terrorists are quite proud of that, aren't they? Man, I was disruptive. That showed me. Because one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. And you always think you're freedom fighting, don't you, when you don't agree? The players make really good terrorists. The good news is terrorists make brilliant players when they're converted. Most of us, if we've been players, we have to look in the mirror. That self-awareness is really important. And that's what come out of a conversation with someone like Joanne. If Joanne's going to have that conversation, if we're all going to have those conversations, there has to be that awareness. It's not just me that says it. But these are the behaviours. So we list the behaviours, don't we? I'm sure when you've done all of your culture stuff, you've got the list of the behaviours so that we can now have a checklist. These are the negotiables and these are the non-negotiables. So look me in the eye and tell me why your behaviours aren't in that box. Why aren't you a player? Let's get them bought in. Let's get them committed to the culture. But let's get them committed on a personal level. Let's talk about their personal behaviours. And I know that can be really difficult internally. I have to say it is easier for me because I'm from outside. When I come in and start talking about things that happen in prisons and things that happen with our different clients and all of this kind of stuff, they can relate to it because I'm not accusing them. Yeah, it is a lot easier for an outsider to do that, but it's certainly those conversations need to be had, don't they? We have to fire them with enthusiasm, or we have to fire them with enthusiasm. Because how good does it feel when they've gone? How awesome does that feel? So we have to make it personal. We have to get them bought in, vision and values. The conversations we have about behaviours in the workplace must also be related with, does anyone know the expression totems? Totems is one of the buzzwords, if you like, of the moment, and it means the stories we tell. The stories about the players, the stories about the terrorists, and you don't have to use the examples of the people in your organisation. Use examples of people in other organisations. There's books full of them. There's speakers full of stories. Tell the story and just see if they go a little bit red as they go, ooh, I think I might have done that. Because I'm sure we all have. We've all done that, sitting in a room, somebody says something, this is where we're going, this is where we're going, and on the way out, they don't say anything in the room, they don't say anything to the boss or anyone influential, they just turn around to the person next to them and go, yeah, that'll never happen. I remember doing some work with an organisation, there were about 5,000 people, and one guy said, nearly all the way through, about a day and a half, that'll never happen, that'll never happen, that'll never happen. And in the break on the second day, he came up to me, he said, and I'd just done this model, he said, I've just realised why this stuff, and I thought he was going to have a go at me again, I just realised why this stuff won't happen. And I said, it's almost one of those, why won't it happen, Bob? Why won't it happen? And he went, because there's people like me sitting around the organisation going, that'll never happen, and I've just realised I'm the one stopping it. And there's a moment when I wanted to fall on my knees. Yes! Thank you, that penny drop moment when they realise the reason things don't happen is just because they've not bought in. We need the critical mass of people to be bought into what we're doing. Get them into that player's box, fill them with enthusiasm. Yes, all the same positive, fluffy stuff that we have talked about is absolutely critical, but as are the tough conversations, Change them or change them. And by gum, does it feel good? Go on. Yeah.
You won't actually listen to what you've got to say, because you can have people that are players but are still quite destructive. How can you tackle that?
Give me an example of a player who's destructive. Not a name. Sorry, an example of a behaviour.
Someone that's extremely high up in the organisation, whether it be the managing director,
Mm-hmm.
who makes the decisions, who kind of develops the culture.
Yeah.
That person, how can you go to that individual and explain that there's an issue with the culture if that individual is going to take it personally, for example? So
It's a good question.
Very extremely committed.
Yeah.
Drive the business.
Mm-hmm.
Almost control the business. So how can you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Does everybody know what she means? Yes? Yes? Okay. I am that person. What is it you want to say to me? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't realise you'd snuck in the room. Okay. Yeah, and we've all had that at some point. And what we're talking about there is self-awareness. Yeah? I find that there are three reasons, if you like, that people appear to be players but actually aren't, are being destructive. Because I don't think a player can be destructive. I think our definition of a player has to be very carefully defined. You see, what you might have really is somebody who doesn't have the self-belief that you think they have. Yeah? So there are lots of people who go around going, I'm a great, we've all heard them, I'm a great manager, I'm a great manager, I'm a great manager. And then you speak to people they manage and they go, what a manager. Fill in the blank. I know you have done. Yeah, what a bleak manager. They're a terrible manager. You go, oh, blimmin' heck. Now, there's three reasons for that, okay? One is they actually are putting on a face. And we've all done that sometimes, where we go into denial. If I say I'm a great manager, I'm convincing everybody else, and in the mirror every morning I'm also convincing myself,